Hey there, everyone. It's Mazzy here, and this is a tribute video, but it's really an overview of artwork of Wes Wilson. And if those of you who watch my videos know that one of my interests is photography and all sorts of art, contemporary art, classic art, but a lot of modernist. And that stemmed out of my, just by growing up in San Francisco and being exposed to the whole poster art scene and music scene in San Francisco in the mid to late 60s all through the 70s, and especially the artwork of the poster artists, the main 5 poster artists who drew at the time and made posters for Chet Helms of the Avalon and Bill Graham of the Fillmore, and then Fillmore West and Winterland, and on and on and on. Now, Wes Wilson just passed away this weekend on the 24th of January 2020, so I'm making this just several days later. I'm just going to showcase a little bit from my collection, talk about Wes Wilson. Wilson did the cover of this book, and this is to me like the ultimate Bible, The Art of Rock. And this is on Aberville Press. There is a small pint-sized version of this book. I recommend anyone who's really into art and music and psychedelia find and get this book. It goes beyond just the 60s poster artists, but that's what I'm concentrating about with Wes Wilson, who happened to actually design the cover of this book as well. I won't get into too much of a biography of him. However, he was born in California, near Sacramento, I believe, in 1937. He came to San Francisco, went to San Francisco State University for a while, San Francisco State College. That's my alma mater as well. So it can't be all bad. And then he started designing posters for Chet Helms and the Avalon. And I'm going to show you just some posters that I have, handbills, and show you a little overview of the work. By far, I mean, I don't have by far his entire collection myself, but in some previous videos, I've showcased little segments of my handbill collection. These are my handbills. There's about 120, 130 Fillmore and Avalon handbills that I'd say 75% of these I got when I signed myself up on the mailing list. In the 60s, you could sign up and call them up, as I recall. You'd call up the number, and whoever sent out the Fillmore posters in the Avalon. And so I got these in the mail, a lot of them. Some I got later years, and I was a little on the young edge to go to a lot of the early, or any of the early Avalon and Fillmore shows. And my first Fillmore show was until The Who in 1969. But I did see, Grateful Dead, Big Brother, Jefferson Airplane, in Golden Gate Park, on Haight Street. A lot of the groups were playing around free concerts. That was a big deal, so I was able to go to those. So to give you a little bit overview, Wes Wilson was really, again, he started to work for Chet Helms and did a lot of the posters there, but then he ended up quitting Chet and moving on and working with Bill Graham for the Fillmore shows, mainly apparently because Bill Graham, which is ironic when you know the whole history and know Bill Graham, he gave Wes and the artist who did the poster a lot more freedom, where Chet Helms really was into telling him a theme of each poster. These are pretty much, I think, all designed by Wes for the Fillmore. Let me hold on that. This is not by far all the posters he did. He worked for Bill Graham for around 66 and 67. It's not a long time, but he did do a lot of posters for him as well. Here's some more. Again, not every single one is a Wes Wilson poster. And the thing about Wes, he was one of the first guys that really popularized this melting color, melting typeface of the dripping things. In fact, one of my favorites, which I don't have, I'd like to get, is this poster with the Association of Quicksilver Messenger Service. To me, it's just one of his greatest achievements, one of his greatest art pieces. But he was very influenced by the Viennese succession type movement, lettering movement by Alfred Roller. And also he really fused these opposite colors that almost would make kind of the day glow thing, but not even day glow colors, but vibrant colors that when you would look at them and stare at them, they would basically vibrate. And vibrate more or less depending on what substances you were using at the time. But it really popularized this thing. He's also a big influenced by French Nouveau, Art Nouveau, Art Deco. So you'd see that in later of his posters. Also female nudes and bodies and the whole idea of ladies dancing. And I'll show you a few of those as well. So he really popularized that. And in fact, Time magazine in some article at the time started calling the whole idea of poster art Nouveau Frisco. And if you know, being a San Francisco native, you know that we don't call it Frisco. Don't call it Frisco. If you know where Herb Caen was, the great San Francisco columnist, has a famous book in the late 50s or mid 50s called Don't Call It Frisco. So I'm gonna go through some of these posters in a minute. One I don't have here, and I have a full-size repro, and I can't find it today. But one of the famous posters that he just whipped together literally in one night and doesn't really look like his style, in my opinion, from what I know of Wes Wilson's work. He did the Candlestick Park last concert of the Beatles. That was August 29th, 1966. So I'm gonna go through these, and if I make a mistake, I think, as far as I know my research, it's hard to read the type and his signatureship of these, but I'll go through these and we'll take it from there. So, one of the first ones he did was this great poster, Jefferson Airplane, Great Society, Heavenly Blues Band. Now, as you know, the Great Society was the band Grace Slick was with her husband Darby Slick and his brother. And when Sidney Anderson left the Jefferson Airplane, they scooped Grace up, and she was ready to head for the hills, head for the sky to fly with the airplane, which is fine because I think, as I recall, some of the members of the Great Society were getting into more of the arts, the non-musical arts, and so it wasn't like she left them high and dry. They were kind of splitting up and everything, and they didn't take it as serious as bands like the Airplane. But one of his early posters, when he went over to the Fillmore, when the Fillmore was on Geary Boulevard in Fillmore, San Francisco, where the location of the Fillmore is now. It had moved to what was the Carousel Ballroom on Market and Van Ness, and that was the Fillmore West. Another Wes Anderson poster with his female forms. The nude female form, again, was a big, big part of a lot of his poster art in the 60s. That melting Deco Nouveau type of type treatment with opposite black and pink in this case, psychedelic. This is great shows. Quicksilver Messenger Service, Grateful Dead, Canned Heat Blues Band, Electric Flag, Moby Grape, Steve Miller Band. I want to give you a good, these are people have asked me that. I used to have these like in a black scrapbook, so some of the backs, as you can see, have been peeled. It didn't destroy the thing, but I taped these in a black scrapbook when I was a kid. Luckily, I kept them all, so the covers are pretty much pristine, the fronts. Some of these I got were mailed to me, some were not. You can see that. But in the last 5 years, I got these almost like baseball card plastic containers. They're acid-free, and they protect these, and it's a nice way to flip through them. So I've had people ask me about that before, but it's a nice way to kind of flip through them rather than I was going to frame them at one point, but then, you know, too complicated. This is a good cost-effective way. Okay, this is a weekend with the Grateful Dead, and then Wednesday with Johnny Talbot, and then Country Joe and the Fish, Otis Redding and his orchestra, with 3 different opening acts over that weekend. Great Otis and Fillmore concerts. And again, that opposite color that makes it kind of go back and forth and everything. Vibrant colors, melting letters. Wes Anderson's great artwork. Again, another one of my favorites. Look at that. This is for just the family dog. This is for the family dog, which was Chet Helms' club, the Avalon, and the family dog was sort of almost like a collective, and they also had later on, I think in 68 maybe it was early 67, I think 68, 69, there was a family dog in Denver. And then years later in the early 70s, for a short time, there was a family dog which was on the Great Highway in San Francisco down by the Cliff House overlooking Ocean Beach. But Van Morrison and read it and weep. Try to read it. Gorgeous, right? So these are not in order. So what? From England, Pink Floyd, Lee Michaels, Clear Light. Big Brother and the Holding Company, the Fillmore, Iron Butterfly. If you hear the music in the background, it's the long version of In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida, but it's just kind of barely there, just to get a little ambiance. San Francisco ambiance, even though they're not from San Francisco, but that whole psychedelic summer of love thing. And I've said this before, I haven't said this in a while in my videos, because I think everyone thought all I would talk about was, I worked in the record business back in the day, and I lived in San Francisco. But growing up at that time, being in San Francisco, and a little young, but we'd walk down Haight Street, we'd go to Hippie Hill, which is just adjacent to Stannion Street in Golden Gate Park. I happened to be born on Stannion in Fulton, which is literally the corner of the Haight-Ashbury, so I was born right in that whole neighborhood across from Golden Gate Park. Block from the Jefferson Airplane Mansion that they bought later in the 60s. Jefferson Airplane, Gabor Szabo, Jimi Hendrix. Talk about amazing bills. And then they had the Fillmore Summer Series, just to give you an idea. They had shows during the week, like Bo Diddley, The Animals with Eric Burden, Butterfield Blues Band, Rawson Roland Kirk, James Cotton, Sam and Dave, Jefferson Airplane, Jimi Hendrix, and Gabor Szabo. What a show that would be, right? I think he'd 5 nights or 4 nights. In fact, that might be the show that just came out. Great box set that came out, the Fillmore, complete Fillmore shows. Oh, that's Fillmore East, never mind. That was the Band of Gypsies. So I was wrong, never mind. Steve Miller Blues Band, before they dropped the blues, and Boz Scaggs left the band too, soon after that. But again, the female form, not all bodies and nude, some faces, very Art Nouveau style. And the Jefferson Airplane and Grateful Dead, the Fillmore Auditorium. You know, Jefferson Airplane are my favorite of the San Francisco bands, but pretty much I was able to see almost all of them. I saw the Airplane several times. I saw Big Brother twice with Janis Joplin. I saw the Grateful Dead countless times, starting in 68 was the earliest I saw them in Golden Gate Park. Saw them all through, I saw them probably 30, 40 times, so maybe 30 times. So I'm not like a complete deadhead. I kind of jumped off the Grateful Dead train in the late 70s when punk movement was coming, got back into them a little bit in the late 80s, but I kept, buying their records for the most part, but I got a little disinterested in them for a while. But let's see, I never saw Moby Grape, unfortunately. I saw Steve Miller later at Winterland, because Bill Graham started putting shows at the Winterland, and these artists would do things at Winterland as well. So I think that's about it. Let's see. Let me just see before I go. More Wes Anderson. No, Wes Anderson, Wes Wilson, not the filmmaker. This is another great book, The Art of the Fillmore. So again, as you know, if you're watching this, artists, illustrators, photographers, I'll do features on them any chance I get. And unfortunately, I shouldn't wait till they pass, but it's as good a time as any, bringing it up. There's Mouse, Victor Moscoso, there's Rick Griffin, there's considered 5 main of the poster artists of the time. And so Stanley Mouse, oh man. David Singer was a little later. But Wes Wilson, We love your work. We love your work, Wes. He actually, in the late 70s, packed up his family, his young boy, or I think his young son, and he's owned a sort of a ranch or a farm in the Ozarks. So that's where he died, and Friday, the 24th of January, in the Ozarks. So that's a little showcase and tribute to Wes Wilson, great poster designer, great artist. So enjoy it. A few years ago, 1967 to actually 2017, the 50-year anniversary, I represent commercial photographers. I am not a photographer per se, really, but I'm an agent for them for 35 years. And I've sent this out to a few people when I've sent out VCLT gifts. But this is a poster my friend Ron Walter in San Francisco. Hello, Ron. Hello, Walter, excuse me. That's his design. It's kind of a little tribute to the poster artists, including Wes and the others, and Rick Griffin and Stanley Mouse and all of them. And this was a sort of just the 50th Summer of Love anniversary, as well as showcasing the photographers I represent, with a photograph on the front by Michelle Clement. So thanks for watching, everyone, and Mazzy loves you. Wes Wilson, we love you. Great artwork.